Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, good morning and Happy New Year to each and every one of you. As Fergal has mentioned, it's a pleasure to be here this morning to welcome all of the IDA team back, to what might be the mothership here in the Burlington, as we always had for many, many years. But also I think this morning what I'd like to do before I bring us through the results and the performance over the last year is to commence with some acknowledgements. And those are acknowledgements for our key partners and stakeholders, many of whom are in the room with us this morning, because it is their support that enables us to do the work that we do in IDA and to have the impact that we have and that we across, not just here in Ireland, but across the globe. Firstly, I'd like to maybe give gratitude and thanks to the board members of IDA, to our chairman, to Fergal, and indeed for their continued guidance, oversight, and indeed support for the culture of the organisation and what we strive to achieve on a daily basis. And it's great to see such a large number of our board members here today. They're actually clustered here in the corner, if anyone is wondering. So so please do make sure to come and say hello. So we're joined today by Kevin Cooney, by Leisha Daly, by John Newham, obviously from our parent department, Bill O'Connell, Helen Kelly, and Francis Ruan, who actually is joining our board as of this week as well. So you're all very welcome, and thank you very much for your continued support as well. I'm also delighted that we're joined here today from colleagues from across the government department, and I extend a very warm welcome and appreciation for your continued partnership with IDA, delivering future growth and indeed success for Ireland. And today we're joined by actually 5 Secretaries Generals across the government department. I think this is probably what Fergal talks about, what's unique. What's unique about Ireland is the fact that we collaborate and that we work together as a whole of government approach. And yes, we haven't all the answers, but we will get to the answers. And I think that's what's so critically important. And today I'd want to recognise we have Secretary General Una Buckley from Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications. We have Secretary General Jackie McCrum from the Department of the Defence. We have Secretary General David Maloney, who will join us obviously with the Minister as well, who's very welcome, from Public Expenditure, Infrastructure and Digitalisation. We have Secretary General Colin O'Regan from Department of Further and Higher Education, and indeed a number of colleagues from that department. And of course, goes without saying, we're also joined by our Secretary General from our own department, Declan Hughes, with Assistant Secretary John Newham, as I mentioned, on the board, and indeed many colleagues from our own parent department in DETI, who without your unwavering support and commitment, we could not achieve what we achieved. So I want to very much thank you for all of that support as well. Also, I want to extend a very warm welcome to our sister agency, Enterprise Ireland, and we're joined by Jenny Melia, the CEO of Enterprise Ireland. So, Jenny, you're very welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning. And also to the CEO of Research Ireland, Diarmuid O'Brien, who, of course, is a neighbour of ours as well, as we're in the same building. But it's very important as well that Research Ireland are here in terms of the ambition we have in driving the research agenda. And indeed, to Diarmuid and colleagues, you're very welcome here this morning. So, again, I just say a very warm welcome to each and every one of you. We're delighted that you took time out of your day to join with us, the IDA team, here this morning. So as Fergal mentioned, actually this week last year, I stood on a stage here in Dublin and we talked about our new strategy and launching our new strategy, which was launched in February of last year. And when we set about doing that, we set very ambitious goals, and we were setting that against a very changing global landscape, where competition and ever-changing, I suppose, opportunity was abound. And today I get the privilege of sharing with you the team that have delivered these record results for IDA, the team in IDA and indeed the team across the government system. And it's a pleasure to be able to share that with you today in terms of what we've achieved in the first 12 months of Adapt Intelligently. And what does that look like? And as we all know, Ireland is certainly at the centre of the world. And from an investment perspective, we had a record year. 323 investments delivered over the first year of our new strategy. That's a record number of investments through IDA. That involved, delivering 1,500 new jobs being created in the future. And indeed, what's really critically important is the ongoing commitment and delivery of balanced regional development, with 57% of these investments going into regional locations. And of course, that has many different facets, and I'm just going to spend a moment maybe just highlighting some of those areas in terms of growth. The key element when we look to in terms of that delivery of 323 investments is Yes, we have a very strong install base in Ireland, and it's critically important that we continue to deepen and strengthen that. But also the fact that we have won 78 first-time investments into Ireland speaks to the value proposition that is Ireland and the growth opportunity there is for further new names to come to Ireland. And again, I want to really, I suppose, thank everyone for your work across the globe in terms of delivering those 78 new names, which came from every corner of the globe. Of course, in our new strategy as well, we've also set a very clear ambition in terms of delivering scale and R&D. And last year, we had not just the quantum of number of R&D investments, but the scale of those investments. 2.5 billion of R&D investment was supported through IDA board in the 12 months in 2025. Again, setting a new level in terms of the level of ambition and indeed the level of delivery from an R&D perspective. And again, it speaks to, I think, the partnership and trusted relationship that you have with our clients across the globe and indeed with the partners in Ireland to make sure that we can deliver at this scale. And of course, two other areas that's critically important as we look to the future. In our strategy, as you'll be aware, we launched for the first time publicly a commitment in terms of upskilling and reskilling. And we set what we believed was an ambitious target of 40,000 people over that strategy period. This year, we have delivered 33,000 people have been supported in upskilling, an incredible return in 12 months. And I think in some ways we have to say to ourselves, what has driven that return? And I think it's because the very fact that, we go back to where I started, there is so much change happening in the world. The movement of technology, the necessity to make sure that the workforce of today is actually the workforce of the future and of tomorrow. And we've seen our clients embrace that with your support and with your guidance in your engagement. And that, I believe, is what's driven this incredible scale. So this is about growth orientation and future planning for the sites. And the last element that's really critically important on this figure as well is that over the year, and we've heard a lot this year, I suppose, in terms of sustainability, and is sustainability still required? There is no doubt about it that as the world looks to progress, we have to look at renewable energies and different forms of energy. And what we've seen in the numbers in our own investments is we have supported, and companies are investing 1 billion across 66 sustainable investments within the portfolio. That speaks to future focus, that speaks to future competitiveness, and that speaks to a future that's going to be greener and more efficient. And again, I want to commend everyone for the work that you're doing in leading this transition, both from a digital, a skills, and a sustainable perspective. And of course, what's important in all of this, as we look through those investments, is the clients. And what the clients have done, and this is just a snapshot of some of those client announcements that happened over the year. And I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, you'll be glad to hear, but I do think it's important that we reflect on a number. First of all, if we look at those companies who are building cutting-edge innovation in Ireland, Workday chose Ireland to establish its new global centre for AI. IBM continues to invest in Ireland and continues to grow and scale in Ireland. And indeed, 75 new software roles at the very core of their new technology based in Waterford is critically important. Ericsson in Athlone, a 200 million R&D investment at the very heart of technology in the very heart of Ireland, and indeed celebrating 50 years also in Ireland. So the longevity as well as the future focus. And indeed Sony Interaction, who is a new entrant into the FDI portfolio in Ireland, doubling down on their investment in Ireland inside of the first 12 months. Really important to see, and continuing to grow their presence here in Dublin. Of course then, as I mentioned, first-time investments are so critically important. So when we look at this list here and we pull out some of those examples, we have Datavant, who opened a new global R&D centre in Galway. We also have global financial services company FIS announcing plans to hire 100 people in Dublin. And of course, as well, we also have roles in Clavio in terms of announcing 100 new jobs with an EMEA customer centre here in Ireland. So again, new entrants across areas of innovation, of healthcare, of technology, and at scale. And that's really critically important. And on top of that, the skills agenda. You have companies such as Stryker and CLS investing significantly in their skills agenda, and more importantly, communicating and announcing that to the global workforce. And Ireland being seen as a centre location in which companies are now generating their future-focused skills agenda and bringing that to the fore, not just here in Ireland, but across the world. So leading the charge in terms of the next generation of skills. So again, I just want to recognise and thank everyone for the investments over the year, for the investments that have been announced, because these announcements are critically important, not just alone in terms of ensuring that the company's announcements are in the public domain, but also in terms of the presence that it means from an Ireland perspective, that Ireland is at the very centre of these transitions as they happen, whether it's technological, whether it's skills, or indeed whether it's sustainability. Maybe moving on then to look at investments by territory. Over the investment period of last year, North America continues to be our dominant source market at 216 investments, followed by investments from Europe at 85, and then the Asia-Pac region coming in at 22. Each of these territories actually increased their investment year on year by 35%. So we've seen an increase across the board. We've seen an increase actually in terms of strength coming from Asia-Pac and in terms of the diversification agenda, which is so important. And we've also seen a continued strength of Europe and the UK in terms of its delivery. And I think that's really important that we have that diversity. We have diversity of sectors, but we also have diversity of global territories. And that's something we have to continuously to ensure we remain in terms of future-proofing our economy and future-proofing new opportunities. And of course, it's also critically important then when we look at the performance in terms of our approvals over the year and investments, but we look at actually what's happening on the ground. These are the numbers as recorded through the employment survey. So what does it tell us? It tells us that for the first time in the history of FDI investment in Ireland, we have broken the 310,000 number of people directly employed by FDI all across this country. And of that number, I think for those that are maybe new in the room, for a number of years, we actually were in the 200 range. We broke the 300 level 3 years ago, and we've continued to maintain, and now we've actually broke the 310,000 employee level. So again, it shows continued strength and depth across the FDI portfolio. And indeed, it's across all of the sectors. When we look at the key areas of international and communication services, we look at business and finance, and we look at manufacturing, all sectors contributing to that growth across the entire economy. And of course, the important thing, as I mentioned, is our focus on balanced regional development. As an organisation, we are wholly committed to ensuring that we support balanced regional development. And that is why we not alone have our targets in terms of balanced regional development. That's not alone why we have our teams in the regions and supporting the regions and supporting the stakeholders in those regions. But we also make sure then that we could keep a keen eye in terms of tracking that progress across the regions. And as you can see at this juncture, we have over 56% of our investments going into regional locations, and that's correlating to 54% of the employment base also in our regional locations. So critically important, and something that we have to make sure we continue to keep a mindset on. And remember, in any given year, as the chart shows, you're going to have regions that are going to probably increase year on year, and you're going to have regions that are going to probably have maybe reductions. And we have to continue to be mindful of the necessity to ensure that over the longer term, maintaining our balance in terms of regional development is so critically important. And that's why investments such as the NDP are so critically important, to ensure that we have the ability to attract and provide the incentive and the infrastructure to support our regional objectives. Moving on then to talk about the economic impact, and I think it's something that can sometimes get lost in the conversation in terms of the economic impact from an FDI perspective. When we look at the Irish economy and we look beyond the employment numbers, that economic impact equates to 40 billion euros on an annual basis. This is money that's been spent in the Irish economy through Irish services, through Irish materials, and indeed in the salaries that goes into people's pockets right across the country. And of course, that's enabling our export number of 471 billion. And indeed, what's also critically important is the capital expenditure that has been deployed here in Ireland. Because the spillover effect that comes from the capital expenditure into companies, into indigenous companies, into companies that Jenny and her colleagues in Enterprise Ireland are working with and supporting to grow and internationalise is so critically important. So again, the impact yes, it's important in terms of the numbers, but it's also critically important in terms of the secondary impacts that it has through the value chain. And of course, what's important as we look forward is to the 4 areas, future growth drivers that we've identified in our strategy. And as we mentioned before, and I think it's important that we remain focused, digitalization and AI, that transition continues, and we see that happening through our R&D investments, we see it happening through our skills investment, and indeed through the infrastructure that's happening. The semiconductor commitment, and I think when we speak later this afternoon, even with Minister Burke and also I think with Minister Chambers, the importance in terms of the infrastructure that's necessary to support these industries of semiconductors is so critically important. And indeed what's happening through the National Development Plan in terms of the investment that's going to enable us to actually bring forward the semiconductor ambition that we have. The launch of the National Semiconductor Strategy last year was a key component of putting Ireland on the global stage in terms of our intent and commitment to bring semiconductors and for Ireland to be the very core of Europe and indeed of the world in terms of semiconductor design, manufacturing and deliver. As I mentioned, the trend of sustainability, that continues, not alone within our client base, but also across our entire economy. From an Ireland perspective, we have to continue to make sure we bring renewable energy to the fore, but we also need to make sure that we work with our clients to help them to decarbonise, to put them on the paths for decarbonisation and to incentivise them to do that. Because not alone is it good for the environment, it's also good for business and it's good for productivity and efficiency, and that's something we're going to maintain, we're going to keep our focus on. And of course, the 4th growth area is the area of health. Whether it's in medical device or in pharmaceutical, that is a real growth area that continues and will continue across the global economy. And of course, none of this would be achievable without the great clients that we have. We are in a very fortunate position that over the 70+ years of IDA, we have attracted the world's best companies to Ireland. And I've said previously, and I'll say again, you can probably attract a company once and get an investment. But the real test is that those companies continue to reinvest, to grow. And when we look at the success of what Ireland is and what the success of IDA and FDI has, it's been in that reinvestment, that continued. Yes, we attract and we bring companies in, but when we get them here, we make sure they continue to grow and that Ireland becomes central to them. And when we look at that client base and you look at those names across all of those key sectors, it's so critically important that we maintain that relationship and that trusted partnership which you have built and which our colleagues in the past have built to make sure that we continue to bring that mission forward. And I know, and I'm very proud to say it because I hear that on a regular basis as I travel, not just in Ireland but across the globe. The respect that's articulated to me in terms of the engagement that companies have with Ireland, with the IDA, is held in very high regard. And I want to compliment each and every one of you for that, because this is what brings these results to life. This is how we deliver the impact that has been delivered, not just last year, but in previous years. And this certainly, in my belief, is what's going to make sure we have the platform for the future and the future growth of the Irish economy. So again, I just want to thank everyone, our clients, our stakeholder for supporting those clients, and you in the room from an IDA perspective for managing this relationship and ensuring that we maintain this relationship as a fully fledged partnership between IDA Ireland and our client companies. And maybe just to bring it to a summary at this stage, the economic impact is undoubtable, and the figures here speak for themselves. But really, what I'd like to maybe focus on is, as we look out to 2026, we do so as an established, trusted partner with our client companies. We do that with our clients, not just here in Ireland, but across the globe. We have a strong alignment and supportive government, led by our Minister, Peter Burke, supported by colleagues across government, and I think that's recognised with Minister Jack Chambers joining us here this morning as well as part of our conference. We have a future-focused strategy which is enabling growth and delivering impact. And at its very centre is you. It's you, the outstanding, I suppose, workforce and employees of IDA. And I want to thank you for your commitment, for your professionalism, and along with our key partners that we have in the room, I want to thank them as well, because what you do on a day-to-day basis is what ensures that we continue to deliver. And I suppose maybe to finish where I started, what we need to do in the future, and what I firmly believe, is that we also need to make sure that collectively that we also adapt intelligently, because the future is going to require us to adapt. And I know from our past performance, that's something that's in our DNA. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you over the course of the next 2 days.